Good morning, church. Welcome to this edition of Checking In with Pastor Jim. It is Friday, June the 26th, 2020, and I need to say thank you to Ralph Starling, my good friend, for checking in with you yesterday morning, Thursday morning. Ralph was out on his front porch. He had everything set up, and I know this feeling when you have everything set up and you're ready to go and it looks perfect, and then somebody tells you, hey, you're sideways. Ralph got that sorted out quickly. And the last time I was sideways on this check in, I never did get it sorted out. So good on you, Ralph, for listening to your viewers and responding when they say, Ralph, straighten up, would you? Well, you did. You had a beautiful message for us yesterday based on the feeding of the 5,000. If you didn't catch it yesterday, go back and look it up. You can do that. Today, this Friday, I'm going to spend most of the day attending the General Assembly of the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship online. It sounds exhausting to me because I will be staring at a computer screen most of the day trying to interact with people who are not available. It's not going to be easy, but I think it will be worth it. And I want to tell you why. I want to tell you my denominational story as briefly as possible because it's kind of a long story. Most of you know that I grew up Presbyterian. I didn't have any choice in that matter. I was born into it. But at some point, I decided to become Baptist. I had started attending a little Baptist church while I was in college, Faith Baptist in Georgetown, Kentucky. I fell in love with that church, with the people and with the pastor. And after I graduated and decided to come back to Georgetown, he said, if you're going to be here, why don't you go on and join the church? And so I did. But I remember asking him first, what is it that Baptists believe? And he said, well, Baptists do believe in missions and evangelism. We really are a great commission kind of people. We want the whole world to know Jesus. We also believe in freedom, freedom of the individual to make up his or her own mind about Christ, freedom to read the Bible on your own with understanding. The principle of the local church's autonomy, that we get to determine our own mission and ministry. And then finally, the principle of a free church in a free state without either one coercing the other. I liked all of those things. I said, I am in. And he said, I need to warn you, the Southern Baptist Convention, of which we are part, is going through a real controversy right now, and it will probably only get worse. In those days, he described it as kind of a conflict between the conservatives on one side and the moderates on the other. Of course, depending on which side you were on, you might say it was those liberals over there or those fundamentalists over there. You know how we are, how we dial up the volume on our rhetoric when we're trying to do the other side in. At any rate, I was in that for a while without feeling it much, but in 1984, I went off to seminary, and then I really did begin to feel it. I was at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, and I hadn't been there long before it became clear to me that at that seminary, there was some fear that we would be taken over by the fundamentalist. That's the way they were talking about it. So I kept my eyes open and my ears open to listen and look at what was happening in those days. By 1986, I had become the pastor of a church, and suddenly I had some leadership responsibility within this Southern Baptist congregation. They were looking to me for some direction on which way the denominational winds were blowing and what we should do as a church. So I went off to my first Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting in 1987. And I remember in 1987, there was a lot of talk about women and how women could not be ordained. That was the position of this new Southern Baptist Convention that was emerging out of the conflict. And that didn't sound right to me. As you know, I had grown up Presbyterian. We had kind of an open minded understanding of women in ministry. So it didn't sound right to me to say that women could not be in pastoral leadership, and it was because Eve was the one who ate the apple. Even then, I thought, well, Adam ate it too, right? I mean, they both did. She may have eaten it first, but he didn't protest nearly as much as she did. Anyway, just didn't sit right with me. I went to that convention in 87. I think I missed the next year, and then I went again in 89. And after that convention, what I heard was that, maybe we should just pass our Bibles to the center aisle, because this new Southern Baptist Convention that was emerging said maybe lay people didn't understand the Bible all that well. Maybe you should leave that up to the pastors to interpret the word for their people. And even though I hadn't been Baptist long, that didn't sound very Baptist to me. Anyway, the fighting just got worse. Two journalists from Baptist Press were fired because of articles they had written trying to expose some of the truth of what was happening. Russell Dilday, who was president of Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas, was fired by the trustees and locked out of his office. Russell Dilday, the father of our friend Robert Dilday, who died recently. The Rouge-le-Can Seminary in Switzerland was defunded during those days, because the faculty was just too liberal. It felt a little bit like a witch hunt for liberals. And I have to tell you, I was getting tired of it in those days. It was hard to lead my little church through those denominational battles. And then in 1990, I went to New Orleans for what was my last meeting of the Southern Baptist Convention. It was at that meeting that I could just feel something inside me giving up, like I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't sign up for the ministry so that I could fight denominational battles. I want to do something good for Jesus, and not all of this fighting among liberals and conservatives and fundamentalists and moderates. I was tired of that. So in 1990, I went to my last meeting of the Southern Baptist Convention. In 1991, I was invited to something in Atlanta that didn't even have a name yet, but there were about 6,000 Baptists there who were tired of fighting. And I remember the program that was in my seat when I sat down had a quote from Isaiah 43:19. Behold, I am doing a new thing. And that sounded so good to me. I was so ready for a new thing, so tired of all that fighting. Well, that was the meeting where the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship was formed. They thought for a while that they might call it the United Baptist Fellowship. Turns out there was already an entity with that name. So we ended up being the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, which is kind of a long and awkward and unwieldy name. But that's what we called ourselves. And so since about 1991, I have been attending meetings of the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship and working with some of those people and appreciating that way of fulfilling our mission as part of God's kingdom. When I came here to Richmond, I discovered that this church supports missionaries through the Southern Baptist Convention and through the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. We don't ask the church to make a decision or to come down on one side or the other, but we let our members decide where they want their mission dollars to go. And here's what I also learned. We are not officially affiliated with either of those entities. We're not a CBF church. We're not an SBC church. We support missionaries through those two entities, which gives you in the pew the full freedom to send your dollars exactly where you want to send them. I would say these days the Southern Baptist Convention continues to focus on evangelism. But the good news is they're not having to fight the fight anymore that they were back in those days. The Cooperative Baptist Fellowship seems to focus more on issues of justice, but they are not having to fight the fight they were back in those days. You can look through those websites. You can find out what both of those groups are doing. You can decide where you want to send your mission dollars. But that's what I love about this church, Richmond's First Baptist Church. We are not forcing you to decide what kind of Baptist you want to be. We are letting you choose. Remember what I said about becoming Baptist in the first place? How my pastor told me that being Baptist means freedom. We have that freedom to decide for ourselves about Jesus, that freedom to read the Bible on our own with understanding. Yes, we have that freedom as a church to determine our own mission and ministry and whom we will ordain, either male or female. And finally, the principle of a free church in a free state. Ain't nobody but Jesus going to tell us what to do. I love being Baptist. And I love the kind of freedom that comes with it. And today I'm going to spend a lot of time in a Baptist meeting trying to learn more about how Baptists are working together to fulfill the mission of Christ in this world. I don't know what I'll have to say to you tomorrow, but today I ask for your prayers, not only for me in that long meeting, but for the CBF and also for the SBC, and for all Christians of every denomination who are working around the world to bring heaven a little closer to earth. God bless them, everyone, and God bless you today, regardless of your denominational identity. I'm glad you tuned in, and I hope today is as beautiful as it looks from my window. Bless you in every way. See you tomorrow.